Here's Johnny!
Until the last minute of Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, the plot seems to be wrapping up in a conventional way. Crazed Overlook Hotel caretaker Jack has met his end, and his wife Wendy and son Danny have managed to escape. But then comes the twist. The camera zeroes in on a photograph dated 1921, in which a man who looks just like Jack appears inside the hotel ballroom. The film is set around 1980, so what could Jack's presence in this photo really mean? Even though this final shot may seem to come out of nowhere, Kubrick hints at its significance throughout the film and connects it to the story's broader themes of history and cycles of recurring violence. So let's take a look at how to make sense of this ending.
You do feel at the end, though, that he's not annihilated. He's frozen. Somehow he could be thawed out and he'll be back. Just like he was back already. He's in the photographs from the 20s. Whatever it is that makes the spirit of that character, it will return. It will always come back. And it will always need a blood sacrifice in order to do the bidding of the ghosts of this hotel.
Kubrick has said that the photograph indicates that Jack is a reincarnated character, and clues throughout the film suggest that Jack has been at the Overlook before.
When I came up here for my interview, it was as though I'd been here before. I mean, we all have moments of deja vu, but this was ridiculous.
He's totally at ease with the ghostly bartender, Lloyd.
I like you, Lloyd. I always liked you.
And seems comfortable stepping between the hotel's different eras of existence. And Jack is not the only reincarnated character we meet. The film suggests that Charles Grady, who killed his family at the hotel in 1970, was a reincarnation of Delbert Grady, the Jeeves-like character that Jack meets.
I have a wife and 2 daughters, sir.
Grady all but confirms Jack's reincarnation when he acknowledges his own.
You've always been the caretaker. I should know, sir. I've always been here.
Grady even helps Jack to reenact his own violence by unbolting the door of the pantry where Wendy has locked him.
You'll give your word on that deal, Mr. Torrance?
I give you my word.
Scenes that meld past and present show us that the hotel's history can't be shaken off. Kubrick creates anachronistic visuals that situate people from the past in modern settings. The aesthetic disjointedness of these scenes emphasizes that the Overlook is not free of its violent past, but is stuck in a cycle of reincarnated spirits and eternally recurring violence. Visually, the photo represents that Jack is trapped. His image will stay in the Overlook, just as he is psychologically stuck there. He's now part of the hotel's history. While many believe that Jack or his lookalike was in the photo from the beginning, and he's a spirit come back from the past, the opposite could also be true. Roger Ebert has said that the photo might signify that Jack has been absorbed from the present into the hotel's past. So this would mean that Jack's not reincarnated, but instead that he is a normal person who's been sucked into the hotel's darkly violent spirit. The message in that scenario might be that we can't escape such powerful histories and forces of evil. References to legacies of violence appear throughout the film, reminding us that the trends of human aggression repeat themselves throughout history. During the drive up to the Overlook, Wendy mentions the Donner Party.
Hey, wasn't it around here that the Donner Party got snowbound?
Mentioning this story of pioneer cannibalism situates the characters in a long history of environmental isolation leading to brutality. Once they arrive, Ullman explains the Overlook's place in another history of violence.
The site is supposed to be located on an Indian burial ground, and I believe they actually had to repel a few Indian attacks as they were building it.
Built on stolen native land, the Overlook is founded on cruelty. The Native American motifs decorating the hotel remind us of the fundamentally evil act at the hotel's origin.
Are all these Indian designs authentic?
Yeah, I believe they're based mainly on Navajo and Apache motifs.
This is most clear when Jack throws a ball at a wall showing a Native American image, emphasizing continued cultural disrespect. There's also the logo of a Native American man in a headdress on the Calumet cans in the pantry, and Danny's vision of the blood pouring out of the elevator could represent the massacre of Native Americans or the misuse of their burial ground. Uses of red, white, and blue, like in Wendy's clothes and Ullman's clothes as he sits next to a flag, subtly implicate the USA in the story, and make us think about the role of violence in American history.
White man's burden, Lloyd, my man. White man's burden.
Jack, too, is wearing more muted versions of red, white, and blue when he's being violent. Meanwhile, Danny is frequently wearing the USA colors, and even famously the Apollo 11 sweater, connecting the young boy with the next stage of the country's history and its hope for the future. The film reminds us that consequences of trauma reverberate long after the event is over.
Maybe things that happen leave other kind of traces behind. Not things that anyone can notice, but things that people who shine can see. Just like they can see things that haven't happened yet. Well, sometimes they can see things that happened a long time ago.
The mirroring of characters and events throughout the film, of Jack in the ballroom photo, of Danny and his imaginary friend Tony, and of Grady's and Jack's parallel violence against their families, emphasizes the themes of repetition and reincarnation. The film asks us to consider whether it's possible to escape our violent legacies, or if evil will just come back in another form. Jack dies before completing his mission, but the final moment on the photo encourages us to wonder if his spirit will just be reincarnated once again. Still, there is some cause for optimism. Unlike Grady, Jack does not succeed in killing his family, so the Overlook's destructive cycle may be broken. And it's not merely that the family survives, but that Jack's son does not become violent himself. For much of the film, we're unsure whether Danny will be overwhelmed by evil forces, but while Danny can foresee the havoc that the hotel will unleash, he does not perpetuate it. The Overlook isn't your average hotel, and as the film progresses, it becomes less of an inanimate building and more of a malicious force. Its labyrinthine layout makes it feel inescapable and endless, and the hedge maze outside brings to mind the Greek myth of the Minotaur. The Minotaur was a terrifying creature, half bull and half man, that King Minos trapped in a labyrinth and offered human sacrifices to. When Danny escapes from the maze at the end of the film, this parallels Greek hero Theseus, slaying the Minotaur and escaping the labyrinth, thus breaking the cycle of sacrificial deaths. On the visual level, mirrors, symmetry, and complex patterns add to our feeling that the characters are trapped in a labyrinth. The Overlook is cavernous and silent, and its hulking size represents its dominance. Jack even writes the same sentence over and over, and the repetition gives us a vision of hell in the form of solitude.
Even what he writes, all work and no play make Jack a dull boy, that's sort of who he is. That's his life. And so he just lives up to that thing. He's just all aggression. He's just all stress and angst, and that's all he offers that family. There's no other dimension to that character.
The final shot of the ballroom photo lets us in on something that the characters in the film still don't fully understand: that the mystical hotel possesses great supernatural power. The hotel at large and the mysterious Room 237 bring out the worst in people, at least in Jack. When Mr. Ullman tells Jack about Grady killing his wife and daughters with an axe, he implies that the solitude of the job can trigger people's most destructive impulses.
For some people, solitude and isolation can of itself become a problem.
Not for me.
The Overlook only reveals its dark magic when people are alone there. By isolating its inhabitants, the hotel illustrates how people behave very differently when they know there's no one else around. A stunted writer who lacks a strong emotional bond with his wife and son, Jack is primed to give in to the Overlook's sinister influence. Kubrick has said, quote, "Jack comes to the hotel psychologically prepared to do its murderous bidding. He doesn't have very much further to go for his anger and frustration to become completely uncontrollable. The Overlook's supernatural powers trigger him, but the latent evil in Jack has been there all along."
And so Jack Nicholson, there's no time wasted. He's just a jerk from the moment he's introduced in the film. There's not even a build-up. I mean, you know, you're just waiting. When is he going to snap? And he's all the negative impulses in one human being.
In the act of turning on the family he's supposed to be protecting and providing for, Jack embodies the most purely evil corruption of a husband and father, who uses his masculine strength and power to harm what is vulnerable and depends on him.
Who's the one person supposed to protect you the most in life? Would be your father, right? He should give his life to protect his children. But no, The Shining's about how the father turns on his wife and son, and he's going to slaughter him. And he's going to do the bidding of the ghosts in the hotel.
Yet the solitude doesn't bring out only evil. Rather, it seems to bring out what is truly within each person. On the other end of the spectrum, under this duress, we see the moral goodness of Wendy and Danny shine through. Wendy demonstrates resourcefulness and courage as she prioritizes Danny's safety. and Danny's better angels win out as he runs away from the evil his father represents. So The Shining shows us that the supernatural is not innately bad. People use it and connect with it in ways that reflect their own morality or immorality. The title comes from hotel cook Dick Halloran's description of the telepathic powers he and Danny share.
I remember when I was a little boy, my grandmother and I could hold conversations entirely without ever opening our mouths. She called it shining.
Halloran says that the Overlook is capable of shining as well, further likening it to a living thing.
You know, some places are like people. Some shine and some don't. I guess you could say the Overlook Hotel here has something about it that's like shining.
While the Overlook's powers are destructive, Halloran, a positive father figure to Danny, uses his abilities for good.
You set him up and I'll knock him back, Lloyd, one by one.
Jack's dark side shows up long before he comes to the hotel. He's a recovering alcoholic, and in a drunken rage, he once dislocated Danny's shoulder.
On this particular occasion, my husband just used too much strength and he injured Danny's arm.
In unleashing an evil that's already present in Jack, the Overlook resembles alcohol, which might reveal a person's truest self by destroying their inhibitions and allowing them to follow their natural instincts.
God, I'd give anything for a drink. Give my goddamn soul just a glass of beer.
But while there may be veritas in vino that releases aspects of our authentic selves, for an alcoholic like Jack, drink brings out the person's worst self. So this whole story can be interpreted as a man's struggle with alcoholism and what this does to his family. If we view it this way, the almost supernatural force that preys on his weakness and takes control of him is Jack's addiction.
Here's to 5 miserable months on the wagon and all the irreparable harm that it's caused me.
In the Stephen King novel that the film is based on, Jack's character is more sympathetic, and the Overlook's powers are greater. The hedge animals and other inanimate objects on the hotel grounds seem to be possessed, and even intimidate the characters. King was famously disappointed by Kubrick's adaptation, and he rejected the film's portrayal of Jack as innately bad.
So I saw these all as warm characters, characters that were being threatened by forces from without, from ghosts, from real supernatural creatures.
While in the film, the hotel lets Jack express his true evil self, in the novel, Jack resists the spirits that have possessed him and doesn't want to hurt Danny. The alcoholism interpretation makes even more sense in the novel. Some argue that King's book is a temperance narrative, or a warning about the dangers of alcohol. There's a crucial difference in the story ending from book to film. In Kubrick's adaptation, Jack dies in the snow-covered maze, but in the novel, the hotel boiler explodes, burning down the hotel.
The film is extremely cold. Stanley Kubrick saw The Haunting as coming from Jack Torrance, from the Jack Nicholson character, whereas I always saw it from outside. So we had a fundamental difference of opinion about it. I always thought that the real difference between my take on it and Stanley Kubrick's take on it was this. In my novel, the hotel burns. In Kubrick's movie, the hotel freezes. It's a difference between warmth and cold.
The biggest takeaway of the final moments of the film is that Jack is now part of the Overlook, and it's possible that he always was. The Shining is so powerful and endlessly debatable because the ending works on all of these many levels. As a commentary on the legacies of violence in our history, an analogy for alcoholism and domestic strife, a probe into the presence of the supernatural in our lives, a look at the mystical power of places, and a story about what lies hidden deep within the human soul.
Wendy? Darling, light of my life, I'm not gonna hurt you. You didn't let me finish my sentence. I said, I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains in.